Hey guys, it's Bree. I finished on Thursday Lock-In by John Scalzi, and I've been wanting to talk about this book because the whole time my head, the gears were spinning. Lock-In is about this world where they're what are called Haydens, and they're people who have undergone Hayden's disease and they are locked into their body. They can't move, they can't speak, they can't communicate. So like full paralysis, but they're still conscious. And it ravaged the US in this fictional world, leading to a huge population of people who are locked into their bodies. Over time, a lot of government funding went into creating neural networks so that they could communicate technologically with the outside world. The book follows a character named Chris Shane, who was the poster child for Hayden's when he was growing up. But he's an adult now and he wants to get out on his own and be more independent and contribute to society in a way that isn't just being a poster child for an illness. And so Shane becomes an FBI agent. At the same time he's becoming an FBI agent, the government is stopping subsidizing medical care for people with Hayden's. So the market is undergoing this big shift and all sorts of craziness is about to happen to people who have this illness. Backtrack a second. Chris Shane becomes an FBI agent, and his first day on the job, there's this big murder. In the book, there's a class of people who are called integrators, and the integrators got Hayden's but didn't suffer lock-in. So their brain structures have changed, and with the neural networks, people who have lock-in can go into their body and kind of use them to experience the physical world for a limited period of time. On Shane's first day on the job, an integrator is used for a murder. And no one knows how this is possible because there are all sorts of built-in safeties into the neural network that this shouldn't be possible. I really liked a lot of the different characters. There were a couple of cops that are on Shane's force or that he works with who are really interesting. His partner is a former integrator and has this really interesting perspective on illness, but also on how the current world that they're living in is treating the illness. Chris Shane himself is a character who's really got a lot, who in the past has had a lot of fingers in the Hayden's world, and so he's got his own really different kind of view of it. And there's a lot of really interesting kind of people who represent, I would say, a really surprising choice of minorities that Scalzi wants to work with. So there's a representative of the Navajo Nation. Some of the characters have mental disability, which was really interesting. It was a really interesting cast of characters. It's a funny book, but there were some moments when I was like, oh, you're pushing the funny bits right now. It's very action-packed. There was a lot going on, and there's always kind of something about to happen, right? I think what I liked most, though, was the conceptual parallels of the world. One of the big plot motivators is that there's this place called the Agora, which is where Hayden culture has kind of developed and become its own thing, right? It's this virtual place where anybody who's locked in can go for free and they can kind of be themselves and talk just to people who have the same illness. And over time, it's become its own kind of subculture within kind of just the world. And now what they're talking about are all of these threeps, which are, they're supposed to be personal, they're treated as personal vehicles legally, but they're kind of like robot avatars for the real world, right? They link up with people who have lock-in, and then they act within the world as though they were that person. And there's a lot of talk within the book about, well, if people don't have access to these things, are we holding their culture hostage? If people, should people who have Haydens and who are locked in really be concerned with what's going on outside more than they have to be, and how involved should somebody with lock-in feel like they have to be with the outside world, especially if the outside world isn't making a whole lot of effort to engage with them, right? There's a lot of prejudice, and so there's a lot of resentment on behalf of the people with Haydens. And they're talking about curing Haydens, right? Curing these people who have been locked in, and a lot of whom got Haydens as babies, and so they've never really been in the outside world. And the whole time I kept thinking about the debate in the deaf culture about cochlear implants, which is a surgery for people who are deaf that bypasses your cochlea within your ear and sends auditory signals straight to your brain rather than having to have it go through your ear, which is often where the problem is when you're deaf. And within the deaf community, there's this really big debate about whether people should be using cochlear implants because there is a deaf culture. And by giving young children cochlear implants, are you denying them fundamentally part of their culture that they have by being deaf? And so I thought there were a lot of really interesting parallels, and a lot of the ways that Scalzi handled, at the very least, that kind of more medical cultural aspect were really pretty well done. I thought the book was enjoyable. I listened to it on audiobook. My version was narrated by Will Wheaton, but you can have it narrated either by Will Wheaton or by Amber Benson. I thought it was a really, really enjoyable read. It did crack me up, and I listened to it quite a bit throughout the week. I think I would probably give it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. There were a couple moments that felt forced, but other than that, I thought it was a really engaging story. Really, really funny, interesting characters, fast-paced. And there were a couple of moments where I choked up, which is not like me. I'm not a big cry at movies or TV shows or books kind of person, and there were a couple moments when I kind of choked up, especially dealing with illness and disability. Anyways, if you've read it, let me know what you think, because I can see people having different opinions on this. I'm sure that there are a variety of different thoughts, and I would like to hear yours. Anyways, I will talk to you guys later. Bye.